Well, hey everybody, welcome to the Midweek Rewind. If you were just watching, for some reason, Facebook just kicked us off. I guess we're too controversial already.
Yeah,
maybe it's
like
Brent.
Our context. Yeah,
Brent knows that he's not here, and he's somehow he's hacking the mainframe.
He is.
And
He's
telling
known
Facebook,
for that. His technology knowledge is.
He's hacking the mainframe and getting us kicked off Facebook. So sorry if you were with us. I'm not sure what happened. We're back now. If you just now started watching with us, thanks for joining us. Welcome. Brent's gone. I'm Matt. This is Kyle. We're talking about this past Sunday. Brent did week 4 of our sermon series called New Day, where he talked about contextualization. And you had just finished giving us a crystal clear, perfect definition of what contextualization is. Why don't you repeat that for the folks joining us live now?
I don't know about that. It's the way we interact with the world, or we try to interact different ways. So we sometimes, like a different context, if you will, is I speak to my 3-year-old daughter way differently than I would speak to my wife, or a stranger or something else. Tone, language, all things are different because that's a different context or culture or a setting than I would. And so we need to, in the church world, realize that we interact with different worlds all the time. We need to find that balance on over-contextualization and under-contextualization.
Exactly. And we were just talking before we got cut off here that some people may have kind of a negative stereotype about that word, but in reality, we all do it all the time, whether we're thinking about it or not. It's just part of how we communicate. So that's what Brent talked about on Sunday. And he had 2 verses that he kind of used as kind of his like anchor points to talk about this. So just as a quick recap here, both from 1 Corinthians 9, verse 12 says, we endure everything so that we will not hinder the gospel of Christ. So the goal or the kind of the message behind that verse is we don't want to do anything that gets in the way of the gospel being spread. So that was kind of the key thing that Brent kind of hunkered down on Sundays. We don't want to hinder the gospel by something that we're doing or not doing.
Yeah.
And then in 1 Corinthians 9, verse 22, this is one that you maybe have heard before from Paul. I have become all things to all people so that by every possible means I might save some. So, Kyle, you're a biblical scholar.
All right.
Paul was really good at this. Wherever Paul went, he contextualized. If he was talking to Greeks or Romans or wherever he was, he kind of shifted his message a little bit in a way that they would understand and that'd be more relevant to them. Is that true?
Yeah. So he would go into a setting with deep philosophical thinkers, and he would communicate and break down the gospel message in a very logical way, almost kind of debating in that. Then he would go to people who are working in the markets or just on the street, and totally share the gospel, same message, but a different way of communicating. And he had a knack for that. That's one of the reasons why he planted the most churches, and it's the most famous missionary we've ever had. As Christians. And so he understood, I need to communicate in such a way where they can understand it. And Jesus did that, of course, too, communicating using agricultural language and all that, because that was the culture at that time. And so that's kind of how they communicated.
Yep. And I didn't think about this before Sunday, but Brent mentioned that the fact that Jesus became a human was actually a contextualization.
Yep.
He had to change his context in order to communicate to us in a way that we'd understand. So.
Right. He entered space and time just to communicate to us, and so we can understand it. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. So another reason why I think it's a good fit to have you here is contextualization is maybe even more so important in your world.
Yes.
So if for some reason people don't know you, you work with junior high, high school, young adults. So you are constantly trying to communicate in a way that fits their context.
Yes.
How do you do that, Pastor Kyle Goins?
Yeah, so I work with junior high students, which is like 6th through 8th. I work with Ryan, my junior high director, and then high school, post-high, and all the way up to mid-30s. So even though it's the same gospel message or the message about Paul or whatever we're talking about, it's in a different context, so a different way of doing it. Teachers do this all the time. We don't have all 12 grades mixed together anymore, like one house school system, and they did in the years past, but now different grades. So unfortunately for me, a lot of my communication now is also online through social media apps or videos or things like that, not just face-to-face, which means it's more work on my end because everyone is different and they're not all just one app.
Right.
So I'm constantly reading culture, reading blogs about culture, watching videos about culture, constantly seeing the new trends. YouTube is one of my best friends right now, just because it's so easy to digest a lot of information in a short amount of time. And so I'm constantly trying to stay not up to date on being the coolest student ministry pastor or anything like that, but seeing where people are at. And then can I join them and bring the gospel with me, or shine a light, I guess, in the darkness in certain places.
Yeah. You and I have talked recently that you recently had a First MB presence for the first time on TikTok.
Yes.
And that's an example of contextualization. And some people watching maybe don't even know what TikTok is. So maybe first of all, explain what TikTok is.
Okay.
Why you're there. And maybe you kind of use that, like I know when you're planning your sermon series, sometimes you'll throw in like a reference to The Bachelor or Stranger Things or some other like cultural element to try to kind of bring in younger people. So tell us why you do that and if you think it is actually effective.
Yeah. Okay.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. So first off, TikTok is kind of a social media app. It's one of the fastest growings. They, whoever they are predicting it will surpass Snapchat even in the next year or so, just the popularity of that. And basically you use your phone and you record yourself maybe a 15-second music video or a 60-second, 1-minute music video, and you're either lip syncing or you're dancing or you're talking. And so it's very easy to use, a lot of video editing software in the app, so you can change your face, your color, your color of hair, all that kind of stuff. And it's supposed to be more funny than it is kind of talking back and forth, helps you to go viral, if you will, which is spread everywhere, versus a texting app or something like that where you're communicating back and forth. You're just really projecting a video out there and whoever watches it, great. So that's great. So why is it important for First MB to be there? Well, First MB students is there. We go Access 316 is our username. Here's the thing. Let's say our church is where it is right now, Northwest Wichita, and a huge thousands of people neighborhood apartment complex is built right across from us. Would we not meet the owners, have maybe a block party, get to know the people in the apartment because that's our community right next to us? Of course we would. This is just in a digital form. So we have thousands, maybe even millions of Americans and teenagers, about 60 to 70% of TikTok users are under age 18, are on this right now. So that's where we're going because that's where they are. So one of the things that we do is we have Ask Access, which is our senior high ministry. And so they type in or share a Bible verse or a question about the Bible. And then I, in 1 minute with music and video editing, all the goofy stuff, answer those Bible questions right now. So kind of we've been doing that for Snapchat, and which is another social media app, and TikTok. So we also have a Bible in a minute videos and things like that. Just a fun way to advertise our ministry, but also answer questions that maybe they wouldn't even ask if it was face-to-face.
That's good. And I've been kind of around youth ministry long enough. Fun fact, I have a youth ministry minor. Did you know that?
Nice.
So
You're good people.
Well, some people hear things like this and they are skeptical, or maybe they even have a little bit of a negative attitude about that because they think Christians should separate themselves from culture. Christians shouldn't be watching certain shows on TV. They shouldn't be on certain apps because inappropriate things are there. So I'm sure you've heard that from parents before. I'm not the first person to bring this up to you. So what would you say to someone who says, that's great, I know they're there, but they shouldn't be there, so the church shouldn't be there?
Yeah, it's hard because we're living in probably the biggest communication shift in human history now with technology on how we communicate, what we communicate, when we communicate, all that stuff with social media and internet. Great example is that more and more teenagers are using less words to communicate. So they're reading less, like physical books, and they're watching more videos, or they're communicating through pictures, emojis, and so forth. So that's where our culture is going. And we can say, that's wrong. We're going to isolate ourselves, sit back, and when you're ready to grow up and when you're ready to do the right thing, come to us. That's no longer the case. And I don't think that's the case with Jesus at that time, and definitely not Paul. no one was really ministering to the Gentiles. And so he's like, I'm going to go minister to Gentiles, even though I'm a Jew and I can follow these rules. I'm going to go to that. So here's what I would say. Teenagers are on social media, and the church needs to be on social media just as much. We need to bring the light into the darkness. Now, social media is not bad unto itself. It can be bad, but like any tool, how you use it determines the purpose of it, or if it's evil or if it's good. And a great example of that is Martin Luther, hundreds of years ago. He basically used the printing press. It was a new technology this time to print his sermons, his messages, his theses, whatever that plural is.
Thesi?
I don't know. And so he used that to spread the whole world, or Europe, I guess, on his messages. He used a printing press. Billy Graham in the 30s and 40s used this technology called television and radio. And I don't know if he got pushback using that, but we know Billy Graham now, not because God used him to present the message of the gospel, but used technology to present it to more people in a quicker time than ever before. And now technology just changed. Instead of radio and television, it is now phones and social media.
Yep, that's cool. Yep, and you do a great job of that. And this is unplanned, but do you want to give a quick little plug for the workshops that you're doing? Because you're doing some parent workshops where you talk about a lot of these different things. So if a parent is watching, you want to tell them about that real quick?
Yeah, so one of the things is because the technology is going so fast and teen culture is going faster than it ever was before, what we remember as teenagers ourselves is a slower pace than what teenagers are currently going through now. So we want to equip parents. So the past 3 months, we've only done 3 of these. The first Thursday of every month, including tonight, we have parent workshops here at First MB in Wichita at 7 p.m. The first one, we talked about what is Gen Z, which is basically anyone 23 years and younger. And it's all about that generation, kind of their priorities and how they communicate, all that. The second one was a social media one. So how can parents be equipped and learn about social media and help their teenagers navigate this crazy world? And tonight it's how can parents prepare their teenager for college, and all that. So that's some of the ways we are kind of preparing parents is here's the information we know, here's how to get equipped.
Cool, that's great. I think it's great you're doing that. So I want to shift gears here for just a minute and talk about something else. But before that, I forgot to mention at the top that we are taking your questions. So if you have any questions, type it in. I'm looking right here. I'll be glad to answer. Oh, I'll try to answer some questions. More likely Kyle will answer some questions, but we'll see.
Yeah, and the challenge is go ahead and type a question that is all emojis. I want to see that.
Oh, that'll be good. Yeah. We'll try to decipher your questions. So on Sunday when you were on stage with Brent, what you talked about is something that I know you are really passionate about. I've heard you talk about it just in staff meetings and stuff. It's just come up a lot recently is the generational differences. Just when we were born and where we were born has a lot of influence on how we interact with each other, how we interact with the church. I know that's something you're just really interested in. You've studied quite a bit. So I know this is deep stuff and we don't have a whole lot of time, but really quickly, why don't you walk us through the 6 generations who are currently alive and maybe some of the kind of defining characteristics. And real quick before that, just a heads up, tomorrow on our Facebook page, we're going to post the graphic that has all this that we had on Sunday. So we're going to go quickly now, but check back tomorrow. We'll have the full graphic posted. So
a couple of years ago, I kind of had a passion to understand teenage culture even better. Even though I've been involved in youth ministry for 15 years, I'm seeing a huge cultural shift, particularly in America, with teenagers and with young adults. And I've kind of had a passion for 20s and 30s year olds, which are basically millennials, is what they call Generation Y. So I was on a quest and I read every blog, every book, watched every video I could possibly have. I have a stack of books this high in my office that just deals with generations. And it was fascinating to see how, even though it's America, growing up in the same family, in the same city, how generations are vastly different in how they think, how they communicate. So the 6 generations that are currently alive today is the greatest generation, which is 95-year-olds, up to 109-year-olds if there is. Then the silent generation, so they're 74 to 94-year-olds. Baby boomers, 55 to 73-year-olds. Then Gen X, which another name for is baby busters, okay? They're 40 to 50-year-olds. Then millennials, Generation Y, which is 24 to 38. So Matt, you would be a millennial, right?
Yes, continue.
And then there's Generation Z, which is current 7-year-olds, so the youngest, all the way up to age 23. So the next generation after Generation Z is called Generation Alpha, and they're 6-year-old and younger. So they're currently being born. So people who have kids, they raise a previous generation. They skip a generation. So baby boomers raise millennials. Gen X's, okay, are currently raising Gen Z's. So vastly different, partly because millennials and Gen Z are different because there's not a lot of huge world events. Before, there was Great Depression, the sexual revolution in the 60s, and the end of the Cold War, all that. But the past probably 30 years have been one of the most peaceful planets or times in all of our history in the world. Now, I'm not saying there's no wars or anything like that, but there hasn't been a huge world war conflict or crisis. And so what has filled its kind of place is more, I would say, dealing with economic issues like the Great Recession. Millennials were very impacted by that. So they're going to college less, all that kind of stuff. The Gen Zs, it's all about globalization, as in they're connected to the world at all times, whenever they want, if they just pick up their phone.
Yep.
So having, something happening in India is a much bigger deal. They can experience it a little bit better than having it right now because they see it online. It's viral. They can see videos overall, all on social media. So that's kind of affecting these cultures more in that. So that's just a quick overview.
I know we could go, you could teach a class on it. You could teach many classes on this, but one thing, while I have a captive audience, Mr. Kyle Goings, another behind the scenes to the First MB staff meetings is we talk a lot about millennials.
We do.
And I am a millennial. I am square in the range of millennials. I am
typical millennial.
I am right in the target there. And millennials get a bad rap for a lot of things.
They do.
Everyone older than millennials likes to blame millennials for everything.
Yes.
And one fascinating phenomenon in First MB staff culture is that whenever we talk about millennials,
we're gonna go this route.
We're gonna go there.
Okay.
Everyone asks me because I'm the millennial, and you often like to poke fun at millennials. And I remind you that you are, in fact, a millennial, Kyle Goings. So I know you don't like that. I know that.
I just like you getting all the questions.
I know.
And you speak for an entire generation, millions of people all the time.
All the time. But it just cracks me up because you avoid that label as with as much gusto as you have in you. And I just have to remind you that you are, in fact, a millennial.
I am. I am one of the oldest millennials, near the edge there. But what's fascinating with millennials and several big statisticians, I guess, if you will, have noticed that the millennial has split. Have you talked about this before?
Not on here, so go for it.
So basically, millennials are a very interesting generation. They're the biggest generation that we've had so far, even bigger than the baby boomers. And so what they're seeing is that there's a split, and there's now me millennials and mega millennials. Okay, so a split. There you go.
What does that mean, Kyle?
So the mega millennials are they have a job, they have good careers, good families, not entitled. They were the stereotypical good kids growing up, and then they became good adults and citizens. That's the mega millennials. The me millennials are the jokes. They are the ones that are entitled. Is they get a ribbon every race they get. And it's what a lot of the jokes and the negative comments that people have are the me millennials. So one generation is actually split in half. Now they're projecting that Generation Z is not doing that they're pretty unified in their interests, beliefs, all that. And so when we joke about millennials, we're actually only talking about half of the millennials, the me millennials versus the mega millennials.
Right. Good.
Yeah.
And you and I could talk about millennials probably for hours.
Right.
But I don't want to take up too much of our time here. But so one question I have for you, Kyle, is we are in this new day at First MB where Brent's talking about how important it is for us to reach these young people, young families.
Mm-hmm.
And that would basically be millennials and their kids and Gen Z. But Gen Z is kind of an awkward age. for the church to target right now.
Right. They're teenagers in early college.
Right. So what, in your reading and in your experience, your opinion, what are some changes that you think need to be happening for First and B, or just for the global church, to better effectively reach millennials and Gen Z?
Yeah. So a couple things that we need to be aware of as millennials, and Gen Z is kind of following suit, is that I said this on Sunday, but 39% are religiously unaffiliated. They're the nuns, as in they have no religious affiliation whatsoever. They're projecting that Gen Z is going to be 50% have no religious affiliation, which doesn't mean that they're against religion or that they're atheists, although a big chunk is. It just means that religion is not important. And it doesn't mean Christianity. It just means all religion whatsoever. That's going to vastly affect should they go to church or not. Should they go to Easter or not? Should they go to Christmas service? What are they looking for in a Bible study? What are they looking for in a church? What are they looking for their kids to join in? There was this belief 20 years ago that a teenager would rebel, drift away in their 20s, but when they have kids, they'll come back to the church. That's no longer the case. They are staying gone. Once they leave, they stay gone. Now, we're not talking about faith and a whole theology of they're going to lose their salvation or anything like that. Mm-hmm. What we're talking more about is that's the context we live in, is of the 39%, 60% came from Bible-believing churches. So 60% are former church-going people who then just left the church or their faith in general, or active faith in general, just because, for whatever reason. And they've gone into multiple reasons. Involvement in the church, they're not serving the church. They have no ownership of their church. It was their parents' church, and they never felt a part of it. They weren't involved in a youth group, or they didn't pray out loud. That's another factor. They've never prayed out loud. All that kind of stuff. We can go into all of it. Yeah. That means when we say we're going to reach young adults, we're going to reach a target audience that more and more have no affiliation with the church or Jesus at all. So we have to go into every single meeting, Bible study, life group, and sermon with the mindset that there are non-Christians, as in religiously unaffiliated people, in that room. So we have to go back and share what page we're opening to the Bible is, or hey, we're going to open to the book of John. John is in the New Testament. He is one of the disciples of Jesus. He's called the disciple that Jesus loved, and giving some context, because they don't know who John is. Mm-hmm. They don't know these Bible verses. And so we kind of need to back up and not just dumb down the message. That's not what I'm talking about, but more share. If someone doesn't know something, you need to kind of communicate in a way where, okay, everyone's on the same page. That's just one of the aspects of that. And it also means just because we're a church and we offer Sunday morning services doesn't mean they'll go to ours. And so what do we offer? Because the gospel is preached on thousands, maybe hundreds of churches across this city at any one time. What is First MB's called to do when reaching out to this young generation? And that's kind of a question that we're currently wrestling with. It's one of the reasons why we're making these big changes with possible name change and building change to help get rid of some of those hurdles that people already have when it comes to the gospel message.
And that's exactly what Brent was talking about. That we endure everything so that nothing will hinder the gospel of Christ. That's exactly what that's our goal in all this New Day stuff. So
yeah.
We could go down all kinds of rabbit trails, but we're running out of time. One more thing I wanted to see if you wanted to talk about on Sunday. You also mentioned the shift of online versus offline, and how the younger generations, how they view online and offline relationships, and even what that means for the church. One thing we've talked about on staff is we always publish the attendance at the bottom of the bulletin that says how many people attended every week, but that's only the people who are sitting in the building, and we have more and more people engaging with us online, including those who are watching right now. So tell us about that shift of moving online and how younger generations view online versus how the older generations view it.
This is a concept that a lot of leaders and pastors are very nervous about. Is this mindset that if they watch online, then they're not going to participate physically or go to the worship service. And then it's a lesser quality of experience. So first, let me share, For a person who watches online, particularly Gen Z and some into millennials, particularly the younger millennials, there is no spiritual difference between watching online and face-to-face. Emotionally, spiritually, even socially, they don't have that disconnect anymore, because there's never a point where a teenager is not online, okay? That in their minds. So the average statistic now, okay, the average teenager spends 9 hours a day on social media. That is unbelievable to me. I don't know if I have enough time just to.
That's more than a full-time job.
Right. That's more than a full-time job. And they go to school too. So that's their worlds. Okay. So we can't just hide from it and say, we're not going to offer anything online. You have to be here in person. The other thing is, we shouldn't treat online as a replacement for our worship service, but rather the front door of our worship service, and always encourage people, hey, glad you're watching online, glad you're doing this, but I want you to know, here's what we offer for people who want a deeper connection, or want to go a little bit further, or want to make a friend, or meet new people, and have that. But the social media and the videos and the live streaming, that's all good. But that could also be a great front door rather than the only door that people experience.
Right.
And that's a hard thing for churches to kind of grasp and then move people forward. That requires a lot of a church to, I would say, set up a very strategic way of getting people to connected in life groups and Sunday school classes and things like that. It's one of the reasons why we're building a new building, so we can have those classroom spaces. But yeah.
That's another just a huge shift. Again, we've talked about this in staff a lot, is that now, just for the first time recently, you can watch the best pastors in the world. You can listen to the best worship music
all for free.
For free anytime you want to.
Yep.
So it seems like possibly moving forward, what the church is going to need to offer is that community, like that face-to-face friendship. You can get online, but I think even when you can get it online, people still have that craving for real face-to-face relationship.
Yeah.
And that kind of community is what the church might need to focus more on than they have in previous generations.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. What's interesting is the church can offer two things that online can't necessarily offer. So knowledge is not as a driving force, or the sermon is not as a driving force for the younger generation as it once was. People choose their entire church, if they're going to attend a church or not, based on how good the sermon is. Doesn't mean that they don't want sermon, doesn't mean they don't want Bible studies, but this younger generation is saying there's so much more to that. I want to experience so much more than just a sermon, because I can get a sermon online on YouTube at any time. So what can the church offer? The church can offer two things that the world can't. And the first one is genuine, authentic community, being real with each other, supporting and sharing our burdens, and not with a hidden agenda, and not with selfishness and all that. And the second thing is, we are the only ones who can offer the Holy Spirit. We're the only ones who can offer a genuine, God-like experience, as in God interjecting into your life and healing you through the gospel message, and feeling loved and welcomed and accepted, which the world can't necessarily offer. They say they can offer, but genuinely, the Holy Spirit is a unique thing that only comes through a loving relationship with Jesus Christ. And the more we can emphasize that, not just promote it, but rather than here's what a real worship experience is like, or authentic Holy Spirit moment, which is even hard to describe. Yeah. That's going to separate churches from versus, hey, we're just going to offer a nice little entertaining sermon. You can laugh a bit, and then that's it. Right. That's going to separate the future of the church, in my opinion, is those who are authentic community and authentic Holy Spirit movements.
Yeah, that's good. And we've experienced it at our church, and I've read several stories online of people who would watch a service online 4, 5, 6 weeks, and then they would walk in the building, and then it's not nearly as intimidating, because they know the pastor, all the people on stage look familiar, and if it's not nearly as scary as it maybe what was 10 years ago to walk into a church with zero context before you walk in.
I've had multiple people come up to me and say, oh yeah, you do announcements, because I've done announcements every once in a while. And I had no idea who these people were, but that was their church for several weeks before they took the, brave step in coming face to face.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it's crazy changes, and it's changing so rapidly.
It is.
Social media and online and all that stuff. I know that you and I both try really hard to stay on top of that, but it changes all the time. And so don't feel too defeated, if you feel like this is way over your head or it's too much to keep up with.
Right.
Everyone feels that way. And it's just something that we're going to have to navigate together as a church to make sure we reach this next generation.
And I always say that the teenagers particularly love teaching their parents on stuff they know that the parents don't know. So I always tell the parents, ask your teenager, tell them, hey, what is this TikTok thing? Oh, you don't know TikTok? Oh my goodness. Here, let me show you how it is.
Yeah.
It's a fun experience, but you got to walk with humbleness.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. All right. I knew this would happen. We're actually over time. Before we wrap up, Kyle, anything else you want to mention or anything else we didn't talk about you want to hit on?
Oh, no, this is good. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for everybody watching. I hope you were able to join us this past Sunday. If you weren't, I encourage you to watch it online. It was a really great service where Brent kind of unpacked this a little bit deeper than we're able to right now. So go back and watch it if you didn't see last Sunday's sermon. This upcoming Sunday, we're wrapping up the New Day series, where Brent's going to talk about the 4 words that you've probably heard before. So he's going to go into that and then wrap up the series with the new message starting next week. So.
And last thing, I just thought of something. So let's say someone wants to find First MB on social media. What kind of social media do we have, Matt?
Great question, Kyle. So First MB Church is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and we update that every day. There's always stuff on there. We stream our services. We stream Monday worship on Mondays at noon, and we're increasingly doing more and more, especially on Facebook and Instagram. So check out First MB Church on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And Kyle, where can we find First MB students?
Yeah, so Axis is their name, AXIS. So we're on every single social media platform you can think of. Axis 316. Axis 316. That's just the easiest way.
Are you on Google Plus?
Oh, I didn't even know Google Plus is still a thing.
They don't.
Okay.
Do you have a Zanga?
No, actually, sorry. Almost every social media platform.
Be careful.
Just search for that.
There you go. All right. Well, hey, thanks everybody for watching. Brent will be back with me next Thursday. We hope to see you this Sunday, either in person or online. You're welcome to join us wherever you are. Hope to see you Sunday. Have a great day.
See ya.